You pushed through the pressure, the doubt, the late nights, the aching drive to prove something. Maybe to yourself, maybe to someone who's no longer even watching. And now you're standing in the glow of the moment. Applause, recognition, success. They tell you how brilliant you are, how strong, how capable. You smile, you thank them, you nod. But inside, it's quiet. Not the kind of quiet that brings peace, the kind that echoes, the kind that whispers, "Is this it? Do they actually see me? Or just what I do? Why do I still feel like a fraud?" And you wonder, how can you be so admired, so accomplished, and still feel like you're holding it all together with emotional duct tape? You've worked for this. You earned it. You should feel fulfilled. But all you feel is the weight of needing to do it again. And better. And more. Because one moment of achievement can't silence a lifetime of never being enough. So you raise the bar. You chase the next goal. You tell yourself, just a little further and then I'll rest. Once I fix this, once I hit that, once they believe in me, maybe then I'll feel okay. But okay never arrives, because the finish line keeps moving, because what you're really chasing isn't success, it's safety. You don't just want to be good, you want to be undeniable, unrejected, unabandonable, because somewhere, long ago, you learned that love isn't freely given, it's earned, and this is the wound no trophy can heal. You see, there's a story we don't talk about enough. The story of the high achiever with the hollow chest, the perfectionist who's quietly drowning, the one who does it all, and still lies awake, wondering what's wrong with them. We admire these people. We envy them. We quote them in motivational reels and tell others to be more like them. But what if success is just a well-dressed trauma response? What if your ambition is rooted in fear, not inspiration? What if your productivity is really just a strategy to avoid your pain? Because let's be honest, how much of your success is driven by joy, and how much is driven by proving that you're worth something? How many moments have you sacrificed rest for relevance, peace for perfection, connection for control? How many times have you played the role of the strong one, the capable one, the achiever, not because it was true, but because it was necessary? Because if you slow down, the doubts catch up. If you stop performing, who will stay? And here's the paradox. The more you succeed, the less permission you feel to be vulnerable. The more you're seen as capable, the less space you have to be human. You get stuck in a loop. You work harder. You do more. You earn more praise. And yet, you feel less seen than ever. Because deep down, you're not sure anyone actually knows you, just the version of you who keeps delivering results. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of still not being loved, even when you succeed. That's the wound beneath the grind. No, not laziness, not entitlement, not a mindset problem, but the soul-deep ache of someone who learned to survive by becoming impressive. And the longer you wear that mask, the harder it is to take off, even when no one's watching. So the question becomes, what if the life you've built around being enough is actually keeping you from feeling anything at all? What if the emptiness you feel isn't because you're ungrateful or broken, but because you've been chasing a version of love that requires you to be someone else? What if you were never meant to earn your worth? But just remember it. Because here's the most dangerous lie perfectionism ever told you. When you finally do enough, you'll feel like enough. But that day never comes. Not because you're failing, but because the belief is broken. So let's go deeper. Let's peel back the layers of the perfectionist's mask, the trauma patterns hidden beneath achievement, the reasons why you feel like a stranger inside your own success story. Because you're not crazy, you're not ungrateful, you're not lost. You're standing at the edge of a truth most people never face. You've built a life that looks perfect from the outside, but still doesn't feel like home. And now it's time to find out why. It begins long before you ever set your first goal, before the first gold star, before the first well done, before the moment someone clapped for you and, without saying a word, made you believe that love was a reward. Because that's what performance-based worthiness really is, a childhood coping strategy dressed up as ambition. You weren't born thinking you had to do anything to be enough. That belief was taught, in subtle ways, in silences, in how your joy was received or ignored, in how your needs were welcomed or punished. Maybe you were the golden child, the high achiever, the one who made everything look easy. Maybe being good became your role because it was the safest way to be seen. Or maybe you weren't seen at all, until you excelled, until your report card sparkled, until you became useful, until you stopped crying, stopped asking, stopped needing. Somewhere in that fog, you made a silent promise to yourself. If I can just be perfect, I'll be safe. And so you became exceptional. You became disciplined, driven, capable, responsible. You got applause, you got admiration. But you never got what you actually needed. Not love without conditions, not presence without performance, not safety without sacrifice. And now, decades later, that wound has a resume. It has degrees, followers, accolades. But it still hurts, because the inner child never wanted a standing ovation. They just wanted to be held. Psychologically, this is what we call internalized conditional worth, the belief that you're only as good as what you produce, what you solve, or what you can do for others. This wiring runs deep. It shows up in chronic self-monitoring, in the voice that double-checks every message you send, in the tension in your shoulders before you speak up, in the dread that follows every compliment, the fear you'll somehow lose it. That voice in your head, the one that says you're not doing enough, being enough, achieving fast enough. That's not your voice. It's a script, an inherited one, a patchwork of parent expectations, cultural narratives, school systems, religious guilt, and media fantasies stitched together into a persona that was never truly yours. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive the demands of society. But over time, the mask becomes mistaken for the self, and what's worse, we get rewarded for it. The world praises our performance, not our personhood, and so we become strangers to our own softness, disconnected from the parts of us that don't produce. The inner child, forgotten. The body's needs, ignored. The soul's longing, muted. But the mask cannot feel love. It can only collect it. And collected love is not received love. It bounces off the surface, never sinking in. This is why no amount of praise ever feels real, because the part of you that receives it isn't the part of you that's wounded. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." But here's the thing most people miss. When your why is rooted in trauma, your how becomes self-destruction. You push instead of flow. You grind instead of feel. You prove instead of express. Because you're not chasing joy. You're chasing relief. Relief from that old ache that says, "I'm only as good as my usefulness." And you wonder why you can't rest. You wonder why stillness feels like failure. Why softness feels like danger. Why love that asks nothing of you feels untrustworthy. Because the nervous system isn't wired for peace. It's wired for familiarity. And if what's familiar is anxiety, pressure, chasing, then rest will feel like abandonment. Love will feel like confusion. And the absence of criticism will feel like silence, the dangerous kind. This is how trauma sneaks into success. It disguises itself as discipline, as ambition, as being driven. But what it's really driving is your disconnection. from self, from joy, from intimacy. Viktor Frankl believed that meaning, not pleasure, is what makes life bearable. But when your sense of meaning is built on proving your worth, you never get to experience your life as yours. It becomes a performance, a presentation, a polished illusion of capability, with no room for chaos, contradiction, or collapse. And collapse does come, eventually, in the form of burnout, in the form of anxiety attacks, in the form of deep, wordless sadness you can't explain, because the soul was never built to live on applause alone. So here's the deeper truth. You don't feel good enough, because you've never met the version of yourself who doesn't have to be. You've met the achiever, you've met the problem solver, you've met the perfectionist, but you haven't yet met the one who can be still and still be loved. And until you do, no accomplishment will fill the space where your truth should live. So the real question isn't, how do I do more to feel better? It's this, who am I when I stop performing? Because only when you meet that version of you can you begin the rebellion. And that's where we go next. You don't notice it at first. Not when the grades are perfect. Not when the promotions keep coming. Not when the people around you say, I don't know how you do it all. You wear your exhaustion like a badge. Your anxiety feels normal. Your calendar is always full. So full that you don't have time to stop and ask, why do I feel so empty, even when everything looks full? Because when you live in performance mode long enough, you start mistaking validation for love, success for safety, control for peace. You lose the ability to tell the difference between being admired and being known. It shows up in the small ways first. You can't relax. Not really. Even during your so-called breaks, you're still thinking about what's next, still running internal calculations. Am I doing enough? Did I say too much? What if they don't see my value? You second-guess yourself constantly, overthink every interaction, apologize for existing in ways no one else even notices, but you feel them like bruises. And when someone compliments you, you smile on the outside, but cringe on the inside, because some part of you whispers, if they really knew me, they wouldn't say that. This is the consequence of a life built on earning your worth. You become unreceivable. Even love, when it finally comes, feels suspicious, unreal, temporary. You tell yourself, they only love me because I'm successful. If I mess up, they'll leave. I have to keep being impressive, or I'll be abandoned. So you never rest, never soften, never fully land inside your own body, because rest feels unsafe. Slowing down feels selfish. Being ordinary feels like failure. But here's the thing. When the only version of you that gets praised is the one who performs, you start abandoning all the other parts. The tender part, the messy part, the grieving part, the angry part. You become a polished mask, hollow behind the eyes. And the people around you, they don't notice the fracture, because you still look successful, still get things done, still smile on cue. But behind the scenes, your nervous system is screaming. You're tired in a way that sleep can't fix, lonely in a way no party can reach, unseen in a way that makes every compliment feel like a lie. This is high-functioning despair, and it's one of the most invisible forms of suffering, because the world doesn't see it as pain, they see it as excellence. You get rewarded for it, promoted for it, admired for it. But inside, you're dissociating from your own life. Cognitive dissonance begins to take root. Your outside life and your internal experience drift further apart. You're praised for being calm, but your chest is tight 24/7. You're seen as reliable, but you fantasize about disappearing. You're called strong, but no one sees the moments you cry in silence, feeling like a fraud in your own story. And slowly, your real self becomes a ghost, unreachable, unspoken, unknown, even to you. This is how emotional numbness forms. It's not that you don't feel, it's that you've learned how to shut it off. Because when emotions aren't productive, they feel like a liability. So joy becomes fleeting. Gratitude feels like a task. Sadness gets tucked behind the to-do list. And love becomes another project. Something to manage, maintain, deserve. Not something to receive, not something to trust. But the most devastating consequence, you stop asking for help, because somewhere along the way, you decided that needing others is weakness, that being the strong one is your identity, that cracking, even a little, would ruin everything you've built. So you suffer beautifully, quietly, with a smile that says, "I'm fine." But you're not fine. You're functioning, you're producing, but you're not living. And all the while, your body keeps the score. Your nervous system holds the tension. Your muscles remember the stress. Your immune system starts to falter. Because no human being can run on constant performance without breaking, no matter how brilliant, no matter how successful, no matter how admired. You're still human, and you're allowed to be. So here's the moment of truth. When you live your life to be enough, you never get to feel like enough, because the chase never ends, the praise never satisfies, the approval never fills the space where your self-worth should be. You're drinking from a cup with no bottom, and calling it nourishment. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Because beneath all the masks, beneath the high-achieving shell, beneath the persona you've used to survive, there is still a self, a real one, a soft one, a worthy one. Not because of what they see, but because of who you are, even when no one's watching. And that's where the rebellion begins, not by proving more, but by finally choosing less, choosing truth, choosing rest, choosing wholeness over applause. In the next section, we step into that rebellion and reclaim the self you've never had to earn. Rebellion doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like rest, like walking away from the pressure to prove, like deciding that who you are without achievement is still worthy of love. This is where the story changes, not by doing more, but by finally daring to do less. The first step isn't a dramatic life overhaul, it's a quiet question. What if I stopped trying to be impressive and started trying to be honest? Because honesty, real honesty, is terrifying when your whole identity was built on performance. Honesty means letting yourself be seen in your softness, in your uncertainty, in your ordinariness. And when you've spent your whole life earning love with excellence, ordinariness feels like erasure. But it's not. It's freedom. Because the truth is, your humanity is not what you have to fix. It's what you have to remember. This rebellion is internal. It happens the first time you say no, without guilt. The first time you rest, without earning it. The first time you let someone help you, even when your mind says, you should have this figured out by now. It happens in the way you talk to yourself in the dark, in the voice you choose to believe. The one that says, you don't have to be more to be loved, because love isn't something you earn, it's something you allow. But here's the truth no one talks about. Allowing love, real love, is harder than chasing success. Because love demands presence, surrender, vulnerability. And for someone who's learned to survive through performance, vulnerability can feel like a death sentence. But it's not death, it's rebirth. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you were trained to be, not who you perform to be, who you are. That self It exists beneath the productivity, beneath the high-functioning burnout, beneath the polished persona. But to reach it, you have to walk through the fire of discomfort, of being misunderstood, of disappointing the people who only loved your performance. And that's where the real courage lives. Not in doing more, but in letting go. Letting go of the need to be exceptional all the time. Letting go of the fear that rest makes you lazy. Letting go of the belief that being loved means never messing up. Because here's what they never told you. Wholeness is louder than perfection. When you are whole, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to prove. You don't need to perform. You become grounded in your own enoughness, rooted, still. And that stillness, that's where peace begins. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust and built a philosophy from within the ruins, said something few people fully grasp. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But for many of us, that self has been buried under years of adaptation. What we call ourselves is often just a compilation of what others needed us to be. So the change Frankl speaks of, it's not about becoming something new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And this remembrance is not soft, it's radical. Because in a world that profits from your insecurity, loving yourself without a reason is rebellion. So how do you do it? You stop running. You sit with the discomfort of your own silence. You listen to the parts of you that don't have a use. You let the inner child cry, and you don't tell them to stop. You build safety, not by being stronger, but by being softer with yourself than anyone ever was. You build worthiness, not by doing more, but by holding the question, what if nothing needs to be earned? You start talking to yourself like someone you actually care about, not when you succeed, no, not when you're productive, but when you're tired, when you're lost, when you're standing in the wreckage of your performance mask, wondering what's left. That's when the real you speaks up. And yes, you will disappoint people. The ones who loved the high achiever version of you. The ones who benefited from your self-neglect. But you will survive their disappointment. Because what you gain in return is your soul, your peace, your body's trust, your truth. And that trade is always worth it. This is what it means to rebel. To stop fixing yourself and start feeling yourself. To stop chasing applause and start reclaiming your voice. To stop waiting for the world to love you back and love yourself first. Not in the cute, commodified way of bubble baths and affirmations, but in the fierce, grounded, soul-altering way that says, even if I do nothing else for the rest of my life, I am enough. So the next time you hear that voice, the one that says you're falling behind, you should be doing more, you have to prove you deserve this. Answer it with the truth. You don't. You never did. You are not a project to be completed. You are not a performance to be applauded. You are a person, worthy, whole, human. And the moment you stop chasing enoughness, you finally get to feel it. And that's when everything changes. There's a moment, and maybe it doesn't come with lightning or loudness, when you look at your life and finally ask, what am I really chasing? Not the goal, not the next step, not the applause, but beneath all that, what is it that I actually want? Peace? Love? A feeling of enoughness that doesn't vanish the second I slow down? Here's the truth no one tells you. You don't feel like enough because you were never taught that simply being is enough. You were taught that worth is a currency, that love must be earned, that identity is what you do, not what you are. So you ran, you built, you proved, you became everything they told you to be. Successful, likable, capable, productive. But somewhere along the way, you lost you. And now you're here, with all the evidence of your value, and still wondering why it doesn't feel like value at all. This is the ultimate realization. Nothing you achieve will ever give you what you already are, because worth isn't out there. It's not in the praise, not in the job title, not in the mirror or the metrics or the approval of people who don't even know you. It's in your presence, in the fact that you exist, in the reality that you can love, breathe, feel, cry, in the radical truth that you are human, and that's already enough. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, "Now, with God's help, I shall become myself." But you don't need to believe in God to understand what he meant. He wasn't talking about becoming someone new. He was talking about returning to the self you abandoned in order to be accepted, to the self you exiled to become valuable, to the self that never needed to be improved, only welcomed back. And this changes everything, because when you stop trying to earn love, you create space to receive it. When you stop editing yourself to be palatable, you attract people who can hold your truth, not just your performance. When you stop measuring your worth by your output, you begin to taste joy for the first time. Not relief, not achievement, but actual joy. The kind that doesn't need a reason. The kind that says, I don't have to prove anything today. I get to just be. This is not easy. It's not a mindset shift. It's a metamorphosis, a complete unlearning of everything you were taught about who deserves love and who doesn't. And yes, it will be lonely at first, because the version of you who's addicted to approval won't go quietly. But over time, that voice loses its power, and another one rises, quieter, truer, more ancient. It says, you are not broken, you are not behind, you are not too much, you are not a mistake. You are a living, breathing miracle, and your worth was never up for negotiation. So what now? You don't have to fix yourself. You don't have to hustle for healing. You don't have to force a transformation. You just have to come home to the version of you that's been waiting, the one who never needed to achieve a single thing to be worthy of rest. Let them in. Let them breathe. Let them be. Because you will never feel enough until you stop trying to become what you already are. Enough. Now let go. Let go of the pressure. Let go of the chase. Let go of the person you had to become to be loved. Because the real you, they're still here, and they've been waiting for this moment, the moment you stop running. And finally remember, you were never meant to earn your way into wholeness. You were whole all along.